Hey everybody, welcome to Grab a Stack of Rock. And is it episode 13 of 50 Years of Iron Maiden all of a sudden? My gosh.
Yes, I do believe it is.
Well, this will be our lucky 13 tonight because we are doing a great album. As you can see by the graphics around us, we are doing Maiden England. And this is a kind of lesser known double live Iron Maiden album. And we'll talk about the whys and wherefores of that. But first, just want to say thank you for joining us tonight at Grab a Stack of Rock in 50 Years of Iron Maiden. Harrison, do you want to do the info dump?
Yes, I'll take it away. So, Maiden England recorded on the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son album tour across 2 nights in Birmingham, specifically the 27th and the 28th of November 1988. Bruce actually mentions in Running Free this is the biggest indoor crowd that they've played to in the country, but you won't actually be able to tell that for reasons that we'll get into a bit later. So part of the reason for that is, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the DVD, is it was actually edited and produced, the video component, by Steve Harris himself in his own house. And so it was initially released as a VHS only, the main set without the encores, in November 1989. Following this, in 1994, it received a, Mike, you were muted for that, but in November 1994, which is what Mike was holding up just there, it really received a double pack, similar to Black Sabbath's Cross Purposes Live that year, a VHS CD combo. In this situation, however, the CD was truncated just for running time concerns. Hallowed Be Thy Name and Can I Play With Madness didn't make the cut from the VHS, and the encores were once again not present. Then finally in 2013 it received a full-length double CD re-release with all 3 encores. It also received a vinyl release. I don't have that here to show off. That was its first vinyl release, actually, was its 2013 reissue. And in addition to having the encores, this is cool because it retains the original Martin Birch mix for the show. They didn't redo it with Kevin Shirley, although the encores that they added on did receive a new Kevin Shirley mix. Not to get too ahead of ourselves, I think this is an excellent supplement to Live After Death due to the song choices. But let's get right to that then. The songs. Number 1, opening with Moonchild. So, Mike, why don't you tell us about Moonchild live?
Well, I quite like Moonchild. I think it's interesting that they opened with so much music that was pre-recorded from the album. Like, obviously, Iron Maiden have opened with pre-recorded bits before, but this is actually quite lengthy. It's the entire acoustic intro, including all those keyboards and all that stuff, from what I can tell. Pretty much everything up until I Am He, the Bornless One, to my ears, sounds like it's the pre-recorded take. But it must have been spectacular to see live. I haven't watched the DVD. I don't even know if I own the DVD. And we'll talk about the VHS a little bit later. What else did I have to say about Moonchild? Interesting enough, there's another thing there that's pre-recorded and new, which is the baby crying at the end of the track, which represents the birth of the 7th son. But that's brand new audio. That's not on the album. It sounds like something from, say, Queensryche Promised Land, if you're familiar with that.
Or Pink Floyd The Wall, I think, has a similar baby crying after the first song.
I think you're right. Now, as far as this version of Moonchild goes, as you know, every time we do one of these shows, I listen to the album on repeat. And I think I probably spun this album maybe 10 times this week. So think about how much time I've invested into that. My notes say that Bruce's voice is absolutely stunning here as he goes slightly off album format and just lets it rip without the rasp. I was really, really impressed with Bruce's voice on this track. Now, later on, he struggles a bit on other tracks, which we'll get into. But out of the gates, holy smokes. Like, this is honestly one of my favorite Bruce Dickinson vocal performances. So there you go, Moonchild. Henry, I think of Live After Death as definitive, but it doesn't cover songs from the albums made after it, of course. Yeah, so we're going to talk about this more as we also do Real Live One and Real Dead One. But there's a wealth of tracks that, if they had released this as a double live album in 89, for example, nobody would have blinked an eye. One thing I did want to address after your opening blurb, though, is I wanted to ask you, Do you think it was a missed opportunity that this was not released as a live album until way later on? What do you think?
Well, coming from a modern perspective, where Maiden release albums pretty much every album tour these days, it's very easy to look back at the '80s and go, "Oh, they should have released one from Peace of Mind. They should have videoed Somewhere in Time and all that." But I mean, they didn't put out Beast Over Hammersmith as a full length live album back in the day. After that, VHS ended up getting scrapped. Maybe it was too early for a live album. I don't know. It's hard to say with absolute certainty. Rob and Steve, no, not Rob, Rod and Steve have always steered the good ship Iron Maiden straight for the most part. So I trust whatever judgment they had in doing this, how they chose to do it.
Okay, very cool. I can just tell you this, Harrison. After listening to it 10 times this week, I felt myself like back in that 1988-89 groove of when Seventh Son was brand new and seeing those music videos come out. And I can tell you that if this album had come out in 89 or even as late as 1990, we would have loved it. We would have absolutely loved it. Anyway, moving on, your view on Moonchild.
Moonchild, it's a really solid rendition. I also pointed out this new baby crying outro, but something to do with the sound that I'd like to talk about that's not Bruce. It's actually Steve. This is the era of the twig snapping bass tone. Now, Steve's always had a very clicky, clanky bass tone to it, but here it's very, very like click, 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 click as he goes. It's a very atypical bass sound. There's not much bottom end on these versions of the Iron Maiden track. But it's an acquired taste. Like, I don't mind Steve Harris's bass tone. And part of the reason I don't call Iron Maiden heavy metal in the same way that I call Judas Priest heavy metal is because the Iron Maiden bottom end is like pretty light compared to, say, Sabbath with a Geezer Butler. On some songs there, I am listening to Steve underneath going click, 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 click and going, it's not that great. Some other songs I don't mind it sort of thing. But yeah, it's a very unique bass tone because this is sort of like the peak of its clickiness.
Yeah, all that is accurate. No argument. So I guess we're on to The Evil That Men Do. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really have much to say here. For a lot of these songs, we won't have much to say because we've already covered the actual tracks in detail. So we're talking specifically about these versions. But I like that they started off with 2 new tracks. This one,
yes, this would sort of go on to become the norm from this tour onwards, I think.
I think you're right, yeah. Good choice, though, being a single and a catchy one at that. Although the lyrics, listening to it, we were still dealing with the religious right in the 80s, and it's not lyrical material that the Bible Belt would have liked too much. Slept in the dust with his daughter, eyes red with the slaughter of innocents. He's talking about sleeping with the daughter of Satan. But Bruce is still powering through on lead vocals. And this is a challenging song to power through because there's a lot of really powerful lines, that living on a razor's edge, balancing on a ledge. It's very, very high powered singing the whole way through. So kudos to Bruce. That's 2 songs in a row where he's just top notch, top lungs. What are your thoughts on this version of?
Yeah, similarly, I thought this was a solid and powerful version of The Evil That Men Do. There are better versions out there, I think, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with this one.
Sorry, I'm struggling with the mute and unmute because we're live on location, as you can see this weekend. Okay, so up next, then we get to basically going back to The Number of the Beast, throwing in a classic with The Prisoner, a great version of The Prisoner. The audience is all there for it. They obviously, speak along to that opening monologue, and they punctuate that riff with a lot of yeah. So, you get da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na, you know what I'm talking about. Adrian sounds really good on backing vocals, and his answer vocals are integral to any live version of The Prisoner that I've heard. And he doesn't necessarily sing it straight. He sings it, I'm a free man sometimes. It's just great to hear Adrian sing. That's all I have to say about that. Over to you.
Yeah, The Prisoner is great to hear. This was its first live album debut. And other than Beast Over Hammersmith, which is a retrospective release, I think it's its only live album appearance. Bruce is struggling a little on the high notes. It's sort of something that will sort of bit of an indicator on things to come for some of these early 80s Bruce tracks, but it's not too bad here.
Henry Wright, it's very cold. I'll message you later, buddy. There's a reason we're not doing the show outdoors today. It's the reason that we're in front of the fireplace. Okay, so after that, we get to, oh, goodness gracious me, Still Life. Now, this one was originally released as a single B-side to the Infinite Dreams single, which we took a look at last week. We did the first 10 years box set. So sadly, this is basically the last time that you're going to see the first 10 years box set on the show. So Still Life, man, we've talked about this song when we did our Peace of Mind episode. I think we both know that this one is a personal favorite of mine, and you'll have to inform us on how often we heard this one live. But my notes state, finally, a live version of Still Life. It is everything you want it to be if you are a Peace of Mind fan. The heavy parts are faster and heavier. Bruce's vocals are more off the hook. He does mess up the second last line where he sings, coming all the time, now we rest in peace. It should have been always after me, now we rest in peace. One interesting thing, though, they added keyboards. This is rare. Maybe you would know more about adding keyboards to old songs that didn't have keyboards before, but this one definitely has them now. Over to you.
That's Still Life. Really well done. Really great to hear. It only got played live on two tours, one being the Peace of Mind and that being this. So this was basically its only other chance to appear on a live album. And like you said, it's everything you wanted it to be. It is great. And I like how he sort of like does that will give me peace of mind vocal effect himself. Not to the same effect as it has on the album, but he gets pretty close.
It's like an actor. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. He's singing it as the straight character, and then he's singing it as the give me peace of mind. Bruce is a magnificent performer, and this is something that's going to be coming up again and again and again as we do this series. You bet, man. You bet. And I hope Jex does make it here to Ontario. He's definitely welcome here. Up next, we stick with Peace of Mind. Die with your boots on. Solid workmanlike version. Bruce has a little bit more fun with varying the vocal line than he did on Live After Death. You know, it's a few tours later. He seems to be getting a little bit more loosey-goosey with some of the performance stuff after the initial tours that they're played on. Not much else to say. I still really like the song, but I kind of wonder if I don't know, maybe this one hit me the least. Hard to say. When I say that, it's not really a big deal because I love this entire album. But maybe if you wanted to pick a song where it's not really affecting me as much as another version, Die with Your Boots On.
Yeah, I personally don't really care for the song, as we know, however, but I appreciate the smorgasbord of deep cuts that this album gives us, in particular on disc 1, which is some of what you've heard and some of still to come. Die with Your Boots On is the only song from that disc that had a previous live album release. I mean, The Prisoner was on Hammersmith, but that was a retrospective release. They're all making their debut to full-length live albums here, and I think that's great.
There was one thing I did want to add about Die With Your Boots On, which is I think the backing vocals are stronger than the Peace of Mind version. Remember when we did Melissa Nee's episode on Peace of Mind, and she didn't like the way there's that, if you're gonna die, die. She didn't like that part. And this is just much more... You can hear Steve and you can hear Adrian both singing the backing
Steve
vocals.
and Adrian,
it just sounds
rather than
fuller
Bruce.
to me. It just sounds fuller than the studio version. And one other thing I want to say is that Harrison, the whole time I've known Harrison, he's been the live album guy, and he's always been, well, I like this version of this song better on this album because Bruce does this or whatever. And I'm starting to really appreciate Harrison's perspective a lot more in this series by listening to these albums. Now, once we get into, the current era and there's a live album for every tour, we might get really sick of these versions of live versions of songs. But right now, I'm really in the Harrison state of mind where I'm like, ooh, I like this because of this energy. So that's what we're hitting upon here. We have to welcome Slogan. That would be Sydney from Slogan's Rock and Metal Extravaganza. And always nice to see the guys in the comments. Please drop a comment if you are watching. Okay, so that's it for Die With Your Boots On. Next up is the previously released Infinite Dreams, which was a single A-side. So they're wisely alternating new and old material. I think this is a great version. I don't really have much to say specifically about it. It's similar to the album cut in a lot of ways, but it's just solid. You know, when you're talking about Iron Maiden, saying something is just solid, sometimes that says more than enough.
Yes, I love the song. I love the version. Bruce is sounding really powerful despite a bit of a compromised range here. And the twin guitar harmonies sound really good here, especially the second one where you get one bar, I think, of Davey just by himself on it, and then Adrian comes in as well for the full harmony to finish it.
Yeah, well said. Also worth pointing out here, they're playing a lot of new material, especially when you consider in terms of length of songs. So a lot of these versions of songs from Seventh Son, maybe they lean a little bit more towards the original takes on them because they hadn't been as familiar yet.
Yes, they were considering playing the entire album in full, but in the end, as I sort of mentioned in the episode, they only did 6 of the 8 songs from the album.
Right. And that would have been great to hear them do, but I'm afraid it's too late now. And Sydney, yes. And that's one thing that's cool about this album, as you'll hear, Still Life, for example. Last time it was played, this is the album.
Spoiler alert, this album has stood the test of time, despite the slightly compromised Bruce vocals.
Yes, and despite the compromised track listing over the years, as we'll continue to get to. So far, I just want to get everybody up to speed. So far, every song that we've talked about is on every version of the album. The original CD that was truncated. All of these songs are included, but I will keep you up to speed as we go through. Next track, we're on track 7 now, is Killers itself. This was a single B-side. I think that's the last of the single B-sides that we have from the Infinite Dreams single. And I always liked Bruce's intro on this one. Give me some bad dreams, this one. One of the best live versions of Killers available on CD. Absolutely vicious. And it's actually perfect for following that more progressive, dreamlike, and then heavy-hitting Infinite Dreams. Just going straight into the slamming of Killers. It really works well as a transition. Magnificent version. Bruce's vocals are off the hook. Everything about it. I've said enough. Over to Harrison.
Yes, earlier in the tour, and in particular the Donington dates, which are the other live release you can get from this tour, this song was The Trooper, and it was a pretty bad version because Bruce was struggling a lot. But Killers, it got put in, I think, around November, and it's really awesome to hear this song. And it's a really good Bruce version too. He's really quite snarly here, but he's punctuating it with little perfectly placed moments of a bit more operatic stuff. Which one slogan? There's like 6 or 7 of them. And you're muted again, I think. Still muted, I think.
See, I had no idea I was muted there that whole time. Thank you for covering for me, Harrison. I was going to say, Sydney, I only sing for tips now. Okay, so now we move on to the first song that was on the VHS, but not on the CD. And this is Can I Play With Madness CD. On the original CD in that CD VHS combo set. It's so disappointing when I got that. It's like, oh, come on, guys. Come on.
I mean, Cross Purposes Live was exactly the same. There was 3 songs not on that as well.
So here's some times for you. The original video was 95 minutes. So yes, you did have to cut songs. A CD can only hold 80 minutes. The original CD was 74:27 long, and now the new 2 CD reissue with the encores is 100 minutes 30 seconds. So yeah, you did have to cut songs. It's too bad.
Back then, a double CD was a lot more expensive, as you would know.
Right, like you got to remember the context of the 90s. Can I Play With Madness? VHS only. Backing vocals sound a little bit flatter live. I think that's Steve. But this is the first live version released of this now classic song. Bruce throws in a lot of extra ha kind of lines. And, the set tends to veer into newer songs for this next batch from Can I Play With Madness on. I think this is a challenging song to play live. And this is probably the best live version that I've heard.
Yeah, I really particularly like about the live versions of Can I Play with Madness is that you can really hear the keyboards underneath the chorus a lot more clearly because it's just Steve on, possibly Adrian on backing vocals, and it's not all those many Bruces. And I really love the keyboard fill under the chorus.
Yes, that's always been a great part of the song. Hey, Matt Phillips is joining us tonight. Nice to see you, Matt. One of only 3 Maiden live albums he doesn't own. He has the DVD from 2013 at least. Okay, so that's good. At least you can listen to the entire. You have everything that we're going to be talking about tonight. Kenny, what was his name? Kenny.
Michael Kenny. He was
Kenny.
Steve's bass technician, and we will talk a lot more about him on a later song.
And Sydney, I do get the criticism it gets from some people because I was there at the time when it came out, and people were like, keyboards.
Yeah, America was the US was sort of really turning off Maiden at this point, Seventh Son, and was sort of like the start of that.
There was sort of a downturn with a lot of metal bands in the late 80s where people thought they were going soft. Scorpions would be another example. Judas Priest. A lot of these bands were maybe unfairly criticized for quote unquote going soft at the end of the 80s, and Maiden were lumped in with those bands. Hindsight is often 2020 with these kind of albums. You know, I'm going to mention one that I know you still don't like to this day, but I can remember Operation Mindcrime getting very middle of the road reviews back in 1988. People didn't necessarily get it right away. Yes, he was hiding behind the stage, Henry.
The answer is yes, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, yes, but well, why don't you take over from there? Yes.
Well,
but.
We haven't got to that song yet.
Okay, fair enough. Can I Play with Madness? Did you want to add anything, or are we moving on to Heaven?
No, I just like the keyboards.
Okay, Heaven Can Wait. A song for those who might be worried about their ultimate disposition, up there or down below. That's Bruce's intro. I like that better than the previous B-side version that we got on the Clairvoyant single that you mentioned was recorded at Donington. That's right, yes. Top-notch live version of this now overplayed song. It was fresher back then. This version's faster, drags less, especially in the whoa, whoa, whoa section. And I also like it at the end of the song where Bruce goes, "That's it. End of the song."
Yeah, really solid version of Heaven Can Wait. The whoa, whoa, whoa section in particular works a lot better live when it's the audience and all the people on stage rather than just studio whoa, whoa, whoaing. And I really like all those tasty little fills underneath the whoa, 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 the guitar fills. They're all preserved from the studio version. Muted again. You should just stop muting yourself. That way
I'm really struggling with the technicalities tonight. Anyway, okay, so moving on to the last song on CD1. This is Wasted Years. Finally, a live version of Wasted Years. First real-time Bruce seems to be struggling with the song, and it's in that whoa, whoa, whoa part of the song that you notice it a lot. It still sounds brilliant to my ears. It's a challenging song, of course. I'd also like to point out that there are some minor differences in Adrian's solo that are quite tasty as well.
Yes, you've basically touched everything I wanted to say. I was going to say it's a good version. Bruce's compromised range is starting to show a little here, but the solo is awesome, particularly those tasty little fills at the very end that are, sorry, not fills, licks at the very end that are different from the studio version.
And Sydney is right. I assume he knows that from his own karaoke experiences. Now, at this point, we're flipping the CD over to disc 1 and disc 2. So I wanted to take a 1-minute break here because I have a relevant interview clip that I meant to play during our Seventh Son of a Seventh Son episode. So we'll put it in here. There's a band that was up and coming in 1988 out of Los Angeles, California, and for some reason they got on Guns N' Roses to open for a number of shows on this tour, and I think they were at Donington, if I'm not mistaken. I think they were on the poster for the Donington concert, if I remember correctly. But anyway, Guns N' Roses opening for Iron Maiden. Slash had some things to say. We'll be back in 1 minute.
How's the opening slot with the Iron Maiden tour going?
Okay.
Oh no. Why?
No, Iron Maiden's
We get no
great,
sound checks.
but
They're nice guys, but their crew's just really slow and disorganized.
Yeah, they've got this major stage production happening, and this is the first time we've ever been on the beginning of a tour with another band. So this might happen with every band. So it's nothing against Iron Maiden. It's just that their production's not together. and we never get sound checks, and their monitor guy doesn't work for us, so he doesn't know what we want. And it's just been sort of like a disaster.
Oh.
But we're
Slowly but
basically,
surely.
yeah, pulling it off. And the other thing is that it's like two sides of the coins as far as music goes. You know what I mean? It's like Iron Maiden sings about Vikings and Gothic influence, this and that, and dragons and stuff. And we just basically just hang out.
So I can honestly say when that interview aired in '88, and I taped it with my VCR, I can honestly say it pissed me off because I thought Slash sounded pretty ungrateful there. And let's face it, their track record at the time, Guns' track record at the time, was not great. You have to wonder about Guns' own professional behavior at that time. I think so, but I'm not 100% certain, Matt. Maybe I can ask Alan Niven when I talk to him next week. Slash without sunglasses, but he does appear pretty wasted. High as a hot air balloon. Anyway, do you want to comment on that Slash clip?
I think there is some truth to what he says there, because I know that there's been times in the past where Iron Maiden's crew have, particularly Dave Lights, has had some issues with other members of the crew that have caused video footage to be unusable due to bad lighting, particularly Beast over Hammersmith, the attempted video for that, and the video at Hammersmith 1984 on the World Slavery Tour. They both came out really dark, allegedly because Dave Lights was at war with the video guys. So I think there are some members of Iron Maiden's crew, but these days I think they're a lot better.
Yeah, I would imagine. And that was a high production tour. They themselves got sick of doing production on this tour. And maybe this is a good spot as any to mention that they had this really cool stage with like icebergs. And of course they had eddies coming out as they always had, and very cool backdrops. It was a large stage and a lot of production stuff going on. Now, let me just say that I've been reading Alan Niven's book in preparation for this interview that we're doing for him, and Axl was a problem. And so was Slash, for that matter. To say that he was high as a kite is not an understatement. Okay, so moving on, disc 2, we open with The Clairvoyant, which is not the same version that is on the Clairvoyant single. This single sounds, I put in my notes, this single sounds great, which is sort of incorrect, but this song sounds great live. It's a tad faster, and I don't really have much to say. A lot of these Seventh Son songs, I don't really have a lot to say because there's not a lot of variation from the album.
Yeah, similarly, I just said it's a solidly done version of The Clairvoyant. I think it's Dave Murray on the Pink Oboe intro is the same as it was on Donington.
Yeah, they do the same. Bruce says the same thing on both. And an oboe is a woodwind instrument, so that's kind of silly nonsense, but that's why we love Bruce. I don't want to keep talking about Guns N' Roses, but I will say that I think everybody regained respect for Axl when he was the frontman for AC/DC because he was on time, he was professional, and Angus Young does not put up with BS. Just look at the way they treated Phil Rudd. He does not put up with BS. So that is a testimony to Axl of today. Next track. Oh boy. Okay. Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. No introduction whatsoever. It just goes into the epic. Boom, 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 ba-da-dum. And that basically this is replacing Rime of the Ancient Mariner as the epic of the set. The song proves its mettle in filling that role. Perhaps superior to the album version because there's more drive and Bruce is more off the chain. Your thoughts?
Oh, this song rules and this live version rules. Bruce is barely getting all the words out in the chorus because they're playing it a bit faster, but that's the minorest of trifles. The midsection narration is more dramatic and engaging because Bruce is singing it with a bit more gusto. There's a really cool eddy that appears when Bruce is doing his whoa bit as it sort of like winds down from the first half into the second half of the song. What the middle ice tower rotates to reveal the Clairvoyant eddy based on that piece of artwork that didn't make the single cover, but was sort of like a poster for it where he's at the crystal ball and that's a really cool looking eddy. And during this, basically at the midsection and for the rest of the solo, Michael the Count Kenny on keyboards, so is risen up on a riser, and he's visible playing keyboards. And I think it's a Phantom of the Opera mask, which he does for the rest of the song from that elevated position for all to see.
Okay, so I wasn't aware of that. This is as good a time as any to mention it, okay? So as we talked about last week on our bonus live chat, I bought this VHS combo set at an HMV store in Guelph. And, you know, I was vaguely aware of VHS regions, but I had never encountered it before. So I got it home, popped it in the VCR, and it played basically static and noise. So I looked in the yellow pages and I found a place that converted VHS regions and put it on a blank tape for you. So I'd already paid like $60 for this, and then I had to pay like another $50 to get the
in
VHS
90s money.
In 90s money. And by that time, it's now a second generation tape, and it looked like crap to my eyes. And I was extremely disappointed. And I've only watched it once when I first bought it. And that's my story. So Harrison's the one who has seen this more recently than I have. And the crappy thing about it was...
I've watched this many times.
I bet you have. The crappy thing, though, is about my situation there is that on that Infinite Dreams single from the first 10 years, on the Listen with Nico track, he talks about how he's never seen a video that is so crisp and so clear. And I never experienced that thanks to my second generation VHS copy. So that kind of sucks.
Well, we'll get to that when we talk about the DVD. I'm not entirely in agreement with him.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll get to that.
To be continued, folks. Okay, so where did we leave off? Seven Sons.
We're up to the Number of the Beast.
Number of the Beast. Back to the classics. It's a good live version. Not much more to say here. There's lots of versions of Number of the Beast, and this is one of them.
Yeah, the vocals are a tad iffy on this version. It's not bad. You know, there is the return of the Dave Murray piggyback on Bruce's shoulders during Adrian's solo, which is always fun to watch.
In answer to Sydney's question, the store was at Stone Road Mall. And we've talked about, yes, is this show? Yeah, some tracks.
Yeah, it's funny. In the history of Iron Maiden Part 3, Adrian's like, oh man, we had some great songs, but we were really, really choking the life out of them, playing them too fast. You know, that's like, I wasn't really into it. And that's sort of why he left the band. And then there's Nico being like, oh, look at us. Gee, we were really good. Look how fast we were playing. Oh, we were really something.
I don't think Adrian would have enjoyed playing in Paul Di'Anno's solo band that Steph Hond, during the era of Steph Hond, when they were playing those songs at punk rock speed. Up next, VHS only track, not on the CD, and what a shame. It's Hallowed Be Thy Name. Vocally awesome. Bruce holds that one note at the beginning, nice and long. Is this equal to the Live After Death version? Possibly. Vocally, Bruce is not at the same level as Live After Death, but he's singing it more straight without the weird accents in the intro. You know what I'm talking about? We've talked about that on the Live After Death episode. Davy's solo, bonkers. Adrian solo, composed intensity, pick scrapes galore. Oh God, the solos on this track are so great. That's all I have to say.
Well, I don't know what you're hearing, because to my ears, this is almost unlistenably bad. Bruce is struggling so much. He sounds awful. Like, I've heard better versions of Hallowed Be Thy Name sung by Blaze Bayley than this version here. They should have dropped it like they dropped The Trooper early in the tour. They should have dropped it like they dropped Where Eagles Dare and Flight of Icarus the previous tour, but they couldn't because it was Hallowed Be Thy Name. And I personally don't think this was missing from the experience on the truncated CD, because it's bad. Easily the worst version of Hallowed Be Thy Name that Bruce has sung on.
If I decide to edit a short and put it up on YouTube as a clip, I think we just found it. Hallowed Be Thy Name. That will be the clip that we run as a YouTube short. Okay, so moving on. We're getting close to the end of the set here. Iron Maiden. Yeah, let it rip. Oldies to the end with plenty of Di'Anno era rock. The operatic version of Iron Maiden is fast and fun. Nothing else to say here. Are you going to contradict me on this one, dude?
No, there's nothing new that you can really say about Iron Maiden, the song, at this point. Except to say that what's unique about this version is the seventh son of a seventh son, Eddie, the big one that comes up in the background. You saw it in the intro during one of the shots we had in our little intro, and he's there holding his offspring there, which sort of moves around in its flesh sack thing, and there's even a little fire coming out of his head during the finale that you get to see for one shot on the DVD.
I just, sorry, as you were talking, a lightning bolt idea hit me. I'm going to call that clip "Harrison Be Thy Name." Okay, so Run to the Hills. We are now into the encores, the bonus tracks that are only on the remastered 2 CD set. And I'm really glad you mentioned that the mix, they kept the Martin Birch mix for the lion's share of the CD, and now we're into the Shirley stuff. I'm really glad you mentioned that because that's important to me as a collector. A lot of the time when a band releases an expanded version of a live album, it is also remixed. This is not the case. It is simply expanded. So you can hear an audio difference, but it's actually not that much. Your brain picks up on it, and then you quickly get over it.
Yeah,
So
Kevin Shirley's mix is really close to Martin's. The analogy that I use is it's like film grain on a movie. Martin's version sounds like it has a bit of film grain to it. Not that it detracts from the experience. It's just sort of like an audio sign of the times, whereas Kevin sounds slightly modern, basically scrubbed of grain.
A little cleaner.
Yes. They're very close sounding.
I would agree. I would say that they aimed to make them equivalent as possible. The obligatory Run to the Hills. It's here, and there's not much more to say. I will add
Slogan's comment there.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that. Oh, and nice spot here by Matt Phillips. Very good spot there. The only thing I want to add to this is that we were listening to the album in the car on the way to the lake yesterday. And, normally this is the kind of song I wouldn't have an issue if somebody skipped over it if I was the passenger in a car. But Jen was loving it. She's like singing along. I love this song. So there you go. There's always an audience for Run to the Hills. I may be kind of sitting there kind of twiddling my thumbs and waiting to get to the next track. But here's Jen in the passenger side, and it's her favorite track on the album. So there's always that perspective.
Yeah. I'm similarly getting a bit sick of Run to the Hills. This version isn't great compared to some of the other versions. Bruce is struggling on this too, as we've talked about. It's not as bad as Hallowed Be Thy Name, but there are better versions.
There's always that, and there basically always has been that from like the mid 80s on. We have problems here, Sydney. You and I, we have a problem. You and I, we'll talk. Running Free, great version here. Pay special attention to Nico's drum fills, which are animated and plentiful. Bruce, at this point in the show, as Harrison mentioned, says that this is the biggest indoor crowd that they have played to in England. And he also tells them that they're recording a video. What I liked about this version is you don't get that big, long, I'm running free, yeah, and then the audience participation stuff. You just get it a couple of times, and then we're on to the end of the song. Great version of Running Free. Very happy with it. Probably prefer it to Live After Death.
Yeah, I'm always happy to hear Running Free. Vocally, I prefer Bruce's performance on Live After Death, and we have that nice single edit without the crowd interaction. But as you said here, the crowd interaction is once again here, but now with more crowd and less Dr. Long Beach ruined my hearing and all that sort of stuff.
9 Lives is a better album than Get a Grip, but this is not a show about Aerosmith. 20 minutes is an exaggeration, Sydney. The only Maiden song is 20 minutes long is Empire of the Clouds. And Matt Phillips, thanks for having my back, my friend. Really appreciate that. You might be seeing Matt Phillips have something new coming out in Tim's Vinyl Confession land. Tim has some work of Matt Phillips you may be seeing very soon. I'm not crazy, Matt. Get a Grip's got a lot of filler on it. But this is not an Aerosmith show. This is an Iron Maiden show. And the very last song that we're going to discuss on this Iron Maiden show is Sanctuary, a smashing closer. I think Steve's bass is actually sounding a lot better in this one. Maybe it's the Shirley touch on the mix. You do hear that he's up there on the upper neck, but I don't think it's not as dominant. Bruce does a short version of that yeah thing, but it's not as annoying as on the previous B-side version of Sanctuary. He lets the crowd carry a little bit more. I think we've talked about that yeah version during the Live After Death show. And that's it. That's the last track, and it's a great one. Great one to go out on. Your thoughts?
Oh, well, I just can't get excited about Sanctuary. I see that they've teased it for the Run for Your Lives tour, and I'm just like, oh. But they teased Running Free, which is, they haven't played for ages, so I'm kind of happy with that. But now I did want to talk a fair bit about the DVD, because I had a fair bit to say. So, as we mentioned earlier, directed and edited by Steve himself, and he really wanted to focus on the fans' perspective. So you've got a lot of low angle up at the players, a little bit of far out, but not much. There's really only a couple of drum cams of Nico that break that immersion. None of those sweeping vistas of a massive crowd like on Live After Death, because Rod Smallwood was the one in charge of Live After Death, and was like, look at my boys, look at what we're doing with Long Beach. And Steve's like, no, I want to do this from the fans' perspective. Regarding the sort of Nico saying it's really clear and karate, like, it looks good, but I think it's just a slight step down from Live After Death in terms of picture quality. However, that may be due to the fact that Live After Death was a very bright, very yellow lighting basically show, and this has a lot more atmospheric, moodier blues and reds, so it's a bit more darker in places a lot of the time. There is this one weak camera. It's weird. There's this one camera on like the right side that seems to be like noticeably worse quality than every other camera used. I don't know what it is. It barely shows up, but it's when it shows up, you're like, oh, that's odd. Maybe Steve was going for like, oh, this is like a fan bootleg POV, like they did with that Led Zeppelin DVD.
Yes, a lot of the time back then when videos were shot, they would have, the traditional camera setup, but then they might also have a guy with like one of those brand new fangled handy cams and supplemental footage from that.
Yeah, there's still a lot of like really good looking shots in it. Like the lighting's not bad. Like particularly in Infinite Dreams, you get some shots where it like the whole stage is set up. It looks great. The backdrop's really popping. But yeah, a lot of the time it's sort of moodier. Mike, I know you wanted to say something about the DVD before we go on to the artwork. Or the VHS, rather.
I did. That was the story of buying it in Guelph, and the colossal disappointment of finding out that it was the PAL version and that I had to pay another $50. And then it was so, it was a second generation VHS by the time I watched it, and I was so disappointed. I don't even know where that copy is anymore, but I do need to buy this on DVD. That was neglectful of me. Fortunately, though, Harrison has always got us covered with the DVDs. Yeah.
I should probably also mention the DVD comes with the History of Iron Maiden Part 3, a shorter 40-minute documentary about the era. This was the last. It ends with to be continued, and they never continued it. It ends on the Adrian leaving, and they haven't continued it yet.
Yeah,
you get 12 Wasted Years. This is really cool because this is a documentary from 1987, and this is so they're all like fresh faced, but it's also like in the era as they're doing like a retrospective on the whole era. You got a lot of concert footage, including not just some songs from Beast Over Hammersmith, which made their video debut here, but you also get one Sanctuary that hasn't made it to the DVD, the early days DVD. So that's exclusive to 12 Wasted Years. And then you get the music videos for all the singles from this era, these two albums. If you have Visions of the Beast DVD, you don't need that, but it's always cool to have it on here. And they also redid the artwork for the re-release, and I actually prefer the re-release artwork for once in the Maiden catalog. I know it's ironic because they didn't play the Trooper on this show, but I kind of just really like this artwork compared to the sort of slightly dull original artwork, I think.
Let's just do a nice close-up comparison of both for a few seconds here so the audience can see. Harrison, honestly, I'm more partial to the Infinite Dreams Eddie on the motorcycle. So that's another. We don't always agree, folks. In fact, usually we disagree strongly on at least one thing. And in this case, it's Harrison Be My Name.
Well, it would be boring if we agreed on everything.
Matt,
you wouldn't need the two of us.
I feel that we're in a stage of Iron Maiden's career where they're going to start thinking about finishing up some of these projects.
Well, apparently we're getting a Netflix documentary for their 50th anniversary.
So I've heard, and that'll be interesting as well. Well, Harrison, this is usually the point of the show where we wrap up and we give our rating out of 5. I'm going to go a solid 4.5 out of 5 for Maiden England, the 88 remaster with all of the tracks. The truncated CD version, I would give a 4.
Yeah. Revisiting this, it's not as bad as I remember vocally. Like going into it, I was just, Bruce sounds terrible on all this stuff, high stuff. But it turns out it was sort of just limited to Hallowed Be Thy Name and stuff. I think it's a really, really good album, even vocally for most of the songs. I give it as well a 4.5 out of 5. And as we sort of mentioned, it absolutely holds its own. The deeper cuts on this album, the amount of deep cuts and rare tracks played on this album is unparalleled even today with the many, many, many other live albums they've put out. This is a really solid pickup.
Yeah. I think it is legit.
As far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I think it is legit. If we're going to get one, it'll be this year. Hey, Ryan, thanks for dropping in and dropping a comment. Really appreciate it. Thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it. Well, we'll see you in 2 weeks. We're taking next week off. We will be back in 2 weeks with Mr. Reed Little to talk about the controversial No Prayer for the Dying record. That was a fun episode for us to do. Really looking forward to you seeing that. Next week, we're just going to do a rerun of an old episode from 2023. You can check that out in the schedule, but Maiden will be back in 2 weeks. And then Harrison and I, we got to start recording some more episodes. We are now running out of pre-recorded episodes and we got to get caught up. And thank you, Henry, as always, for your support. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Sydney. Who else dropped a comment? Is that everyone? Matt. Thank you, Matt. And, Roger. Just sit down, Roger. Anything else you want to say, Harrison?
No, I think I've said everything I want to say except bring on the 90s.
Bring on the 90s. That's true.
Slogan. We have 3 very different perspectives on No Prayer for the Dying in that episode.
So Roger, you try to do a nice thing for him and then he goes and does that. Anyway, he's not dying. There's no prayer for Roger dying.
Roger's there in the trenches being like, the horrors persist, but so do I. I will be back by Christmas.
I have nothing else to say except, again, it'll be 2 weeks before the next Maiden episode. And I just want to show off one cool thing that I bought today, which is the book debut by Max Kerman from the Arkells. It's called Try Hard. Everybody here knows that I am a huge Arkells fan, and this is Max's very first book. I found it today at Fincher's Leisure World in Kincardine, Ontario, which I sadly found out is closing at the end of August. The couple that owns the place is retiring, and unless somebody else buys Fincher's Leisure World, my favorite store in town will be gone. So happy to support them for now, but can't wait to read that. Max Kerman, great singer from a great band. As usual, we like to go out on a song in honor of our buddy Max the Axe, who has a birthday party next week. We're going to play some Max the Axe. And I feel like playing Pygmy Blow Dart. I don't think we've played that one in a while. What do you think? Pygmy Blow Dart?
Yeah, that one certainly hasn't been played in a while.
All right. So this is Pygmy Blow Dart by Max the Axe. We will see you in 2 weeks on 50 Years of Iron Maiden for No Prayer for the Dying, unless you want to check out the rerun next week. See you then, folks, and thank you so much for watching. Take care.
Blow dart. Let's go. Gotta find a route.
It was a hybrid.
So raise up.